Canceled all meetings with the Iranian officials until the senseless killing of protesters stops. And all I say to them is help is on its way. You saw that I put tariffs on anybody doing business with Iran. Just went into effect today. And I say make Iran great again. You know, it was a great country until these monsters came in and took it over.
That was President Trump speaking yesterday, Tuesday, January 13th, affirming yet again that help is on its way for the Iranian people. Demonstrations that began on December 28th have grown into a sustained wave of increasingly violent protests. The regime puts the number of civilian casualties at under 1,000. Activists and other sources say it's more like 20,000 plus. It's a big discrepancy. The bottom line is that the regime has no legitimacy domestically, never mind its role in promoting global terrorism. I spoke last night with Negar Mojtahedi, a Vancouver-based journalist, award-winning documentary producer who works now with Iran International, a television network that opposes the Islamic Republic of Iran. We discussed the mounting death toll, the urgency for President Trump to act now, the unprecedented regime brutality, waging war effectively on its own people, and the general quiet of the Western media. We talk about the role of the Basij and Iraqi militants in this last gasp for the regime. Before we go to Negar, this clip that I'm going to show you now is very graphic. There are no corpses, but it is a recording of the wild gunfire mowing down demonstrators in Tehran on January 9th. We've just put in a short bit from the 6 minutes that have made it out to the West, presumably by Starlink. If you'd prefer not to watch it, then you can skip ahead 2 minutes. We have edited the longer clip, but it is sights and sounds of indiscriminate shooting on unarmed civilians who not only continue to stand against the repressive regime, but shout slogans which are subtitled. And near the end of the clip, you can see police assembling on the street below on motorcycles, readying for an assault on the crowds. This was Tehran on January 9th, 2026. Watch and listen. I'm Vivian Berkovich, former Canadian ambassador to Israel. Let's do this. Negar Mojtahedi in Vancouver, thanks so much for joining State of Tel Aviv. You're on top of every moment of what's going on in Iran, in the Islamic Republic of Iran these days. So tell us what you're hearing from your sources on the ground?
We are hearing right now at Iran International, we can confirm through our sources that includes the Supreme Leader's Security Council, as well as IRGC officials, that there is at least 12,000 dead. Now, that number could go up to as high as 20,000. And when I give you that number in terms of the number of people dead, that is just in the span of 2 days. I mean, I've never seen this level of brutality, even from this regime. I mean, this is a regime that is done. And now, instead of just exiting and complying to the wishes and demands of the people of Iran, they are going to kill as many people as they can as they continue to rot.
So you say they're done. I certainly hope you're right. Why do you make that's a very assertive, unequivocal statement? On what
With
basis do you make?
confidence. With confidence. I mean, first of all, they've lost complete control politically speaking. Economically speaking, there's a collapse. Ecologically and environmentally, there's a collapse. I mean, don't forget, just a few weeks ago, President Pezeshkian was talking about moving the capital, Tehran, to the south so they could have access to water. They were talking about how they were weeks away from day zero and dry taps. It was, I mean, it's horrific conditions. Even the air that you breathe. I mean, they can't even control that. Like, there are sometimes advisories and school closures and whatnot because the pollution is so high. They've literally lost control of every aspect of society and they've lost legitimacy from every socioeconomic background in Iran. You know, this is not the 2022-23 women life freedom movement where young women and people in kind of the bourgeois class in the bigger cities were ripping off their hijabs and burning them. These are people who are wearing full-on black chadors. This is the holy city of Mashhad. This is the birthplace of Khamenei, the supreme leader, the holy city of Rome. These are people who were traditionally the pillars of the 1979 Islamic Revolution and thereafter supporters of the regime. They've lost legitimacy in the eyes of everyone. Not only that, you have to look at the external factors. This is not the same Iran of 2 years ago, right? We're living in a post-October 7th world. Look at Russia, their supposed strategic ally in all of this. They're not going to do anything for Iran. They're already preoccupied in Ukraine with their war. Look at China. You want to call China an ally of Iran? I don't really think they are because I see them more as a predatory partner. They are just extracting cheap oil and gas from Iran because they're basically the only people that they can sell it to, right? And no more Bashar al-Assad. They've lost their biggest ally, Arab ally in the Middle East. And look at how Israel was able to weaken their proxies, the Houthis, Hamas, Hezbollah. Were any of them there for Iran during the 12-day war? No. And now look at Venezuela. Trump's actions in Venezuela are having an impact on the finances of the Islamic Republic of Iran. They were a huge funder through drug trafficking between Hezbollah and Venezuela, and they were also producing arms. So if you look at those external factors, plus you've got President Donald Trump. This is not the 2009 Green Movement where we had Barack Obama say, Iranian regime, we are watching you and condemn the repression and whatnot. You have Trump saying, at one point he said last week, we're locked and loaded. He said many times, well, we're just going to kill you. And now he's saying that help is on the way. And
Yeah.
so if you look at his past actions, look at how he warned Maduro in Venezuela. And I remember talking to analysts about that. They're like, oh, this is just about narco-terrorism. And I was like, well, all signs are pointing to some sort of leadership change. And I think Trump is being very clear on that, which he came through on his word. And then even look at 2020. He did kill Qasem Soleimani. And look more recently at the 12-day war. He did bomb Iran's nuclear sites. Now, he didn't obliterate it like, he claimed, but he did severely damage it and set Iran back by potentially a year.
One of the very disappointing things that we've seen in the last month or so is that the Western media has ignored, to a large degree, especially for the first 2-3 weeks, they just completely ignored what began on December 28th in Iran. And after a couple of weeks, and then when the protests and demonstrations intensified and the body count started to go up, they began to wake up a little. And it's amazing because they framed it as an economic protest. We've spoken previously about the bazaris and when and where things were sparked. But I'd like you to please comment on this notion that this is some kind of protest or movement based solely on economic factors.
It's not. I mean, that's completely ignorant for people to think that. And of course, in a authoritarian regime society, the lines are blurred between the economy and politics because they control everything, right? And it controls all aspects of your life. Yeah, sure, it was triggered by the economic factor, but this is so much more than the economy. This is 47 years of repression, of economic failure, of ecological failure, of everything that you can think of. And it's been bottled up and it's finally come out because that fear factor is no longer there, despite what they're seeing, right? I mean, I mentioned to you before we started recording, there's an individual on Instagram, and I'll just read you what he posted. He wrote, "My friend returned from Iran," assuming he was already in Iran and didn't travel there, obviously, "to Berlin yesterday. He had gone to the cemetery to collect the body of his friend. He has horrific images from there, Behesh Zahra, the name of the cemetery. With his own eyes, he saw thousands of bodies. He also personally witnessed people disguised in chadors, the black hijab, from head to toe, firing into the crowd and killing civilians. My friend is willing to share what he witnessed with the media." I mean, and what we're hearing in terms of the amount of people killed, young children, teenagers, adults, elderly bystanders, like I mean, they're just firing indiscriminately at anybody. People can't, from my understanding, of people I've reached out to on Starlink, people are not leaving the house. And despite that, there are still protests happening. But in terms of, the older population and whatnot, they're just stocked up on what they've already had because they're worried that they're going to go out and they're just going to shoot at them because we've been hearing that they've been doing that. And that they brought in last week when the protests were getting a little bit busier, they brought in about 800 Iran-backed Iraqi militia to carry out their repression. That's what they're using them for. So, I was interviewed on a network in Azerbaijan, and the anchor, I don't know if maybe this was his tactic, maybe his style, maybe he was asking me this question to elicit a passionate answer from me. I can't speak to that, but his question was essentially like, I can't remember word for word, but that, you'd be naive to think that there's no foreign interference or foreign intervention involved in the uprisings in Iran. I'm like, first of all, that's like regime propaganda. 100%. And I just said outright, this is absurd and it's racist. Are Iranian people not allowed to have their own agency? Are they not allowed to feel and have their own grievances and critical thinking? Or, I'll see sometimes CNN reporters like Clarissa Ward posting about, what Iranians are really thinking and feeling right now, what this is all about. And then she'll compare it to Gaza, for example. We're our own country. We're our own people. We're independent of that. Like, are we not allowed to have our own pain? Why do we always have to be compared to something else and to another tragedy of some sort? What about our own tragedy?
There's just this really obsessive need in the Western media to bring everything back to blame Israel and America, and it takes us full circle to 1979 when the regime was born, so to speak. It was all about big Satan and little Satan.
Yeah.
That
And
was
this hurts Iranian people too when they do that in the Western media, because at the end of the day, these are the talking points of the regime. And then they'll accuse, there's going to be executions, is what we're hearing, of protesters. Like, not only the killing and the massacre and people becoming, deformed essentially from their injuries, now they're going to set to be executing them as well. On top of that, arrests and executions. So thank you very much for, feeding into their propaganda machine and putting more Iranian lives at risk.
What you are seeing now is a short video of Iranians marking the homes of Basij and other regime officials with red paint and threatening messages, including this one. And I quote, "You suppress us in the streets with violence, but we will come for your families and deal with you soon." Close quote. Now, back to Negar. There was a report the other day about the homes of the security forces and other very senior kind of law enforcement types in Iran having their identities exposed and their homes doxxed. And they were being daubed with red paint with either an X or a triangle. Are you able to comment on that at all? Have you heard anything more from your sources?
I mean, people are angry, right? People are angry and they're going to the source of the problem. And these people need to make a decision, right? Stop killing your own people. Who are you doing this for now? For a regime that's failed and is failing you? What are you holding on to? I mean, this is it.
The 2 million Basij, that's a force of 2 million in a country of 90. What are the bus siege, and are they perhaps going to form the backbone? Because there seems to be a lot of focus on them, their capabilities, and what they can do, prop up the regime.
So the Basij are the paramilitary volunteer wing of the IRGC, of the Islamic Revolutionary Guard Corps. They make a lot less money than the higher up IRGC officials, and they're not considered at the same kind of level as them. I think they are just a bunch of people who are, they want power and they're vying for power. That's what it is, right? At the end of the day. And they're the ones carrying out most of the repression in Iran right now.
Yeah, because my understanding is that they are a very significant target, possibly. We're talking about this regime that is killing just to hang on for another, whatever it is, day, 2, 3, but make people suffer as much as they can. But there are also a lot of very senior regime officials who can get out. But the Basij, perhaps they don't have that option, those 2 million
No, they
people,
don't have that access. So I don't understand why they haven't turned on the government yet.
because they have everything to lose.
But they're going to lose more this way, if you ask me. They've already lost.
I presume direct contacts with people inside Iran or your agency, Iran International, does. Of course, without compromising anyone's location, safety, identity. Can you give us a sense about how important this is and how you're able to reinforce, help those who are doing the heavy lifting inside Iran these days?
So we've been able to get in touch with people via Starlink. That being said, the Iranian regime has jammed some Starlink because they're able to do it region by region through GPS. So what they want is they need help. They need help. Like at this point, they're by and large unarmed. This is how what I would, and I've been framing this in all my media interviews. I'm like, this is not a protest. This has moved beyond a revolution, even. This is now the Islamic Republic waging a war against its own people, but a war where on the other side, they don't have anything to fight back with. So one, at this point, and I've spoken to military analysts about this, they're like, at this point, if Trump is to go in and hit like the oil and gas infrastructure in Kharg Island, it's not going to do much. They're still going to continue the repression. You need to go bigger. It's according to these military analysts that I spoke with, Trump is going to have to go in and probably kill the supreme leader of Iran. It's going to take, it has to be that extreme or else nothing else at this point. As I said, he's waited too long at this point, right? He said, we're locked and loaded and we're there to support you. Well, the support, I mean, it hasn't happened. And a lot of the people I spoke with were like, you know what? We wouldn't have seen the amount of protesters that were out there had Trump not made that call, right? Because they were energized. They felt that they were back this time, unlike Obama. And so already, I'm sorry to say this, he has failed them in that sense, right? Because we haven't seen action up until right now that we're talking. Seems like something's on the way and something will happen, but that something has to be very big to have an effect at this point because we've already crossed that line.
That's certainly the consensus in Israel. And as you know, Israel has a lot of skin in the game, so to speak, because whatever America does, they're going to lash back at us.
Yeah.
Even if
Oh, 'cause to be honest with you, every Iranian that I've spoken to out of Iran has said, why can't they just go and kill them easily? What are they waiting for? And please, Israel, help. That's what I've been hearing from people inside Iran. And they don't understand. They're like, we don't get why Israel isn't doing something. Israelis should know this. Like, Iranians have all their hopes pinned on Israel right now because this is how they view them. They're like, well, they're already in there. Just, do something. And they say, Iranians say, if not for us, for your own self, because Iran is an existential threat to Israel.
we've done a lot, and I hope we're able to do more. Negar, thank you so much. I know that you're following up with that cemetery story that you
Yes, trying, yeah.
and I look forward to, I hope you're able to connect with the individual and tell us a little more about what's going on inside. Thanks, as always, for making time for us. Thanks for being here. I'll be speaking later today with former Israeli ambassador to the United States, Michael Oren, discussing the historical arc of Persia and Iran as a major power in the region. That's a wrap. Never a dull moment in these parts. Until next time, be safe. We love hearing from you, so please comment on our website, stateoftelaviv.com, or send us a note to vivian@stateoftelaviv.com. That's VIVIAN @stateoftelaviv.com. And if you go to our website, stateoftelaviv.com, you can find the subscribe button and take it from there. Hope that you do that. On behalf of the State of Tel Aviv core team, Jan Szabo, our creative, graphic, visual, and marketing man, Amir White, producer and editor extraordinaire, sound guy, who is also impressively patient with me and my boomer tech deficiencies, and our social media manager who pitches in on everything. Thank you, Maya Naftalin. Thanks to the team, and thank you, listeners, for being here. Until next time, stay safe.